Part 1: The Illusion of War. You've seen the images. Grainy black and white tanks rolling through mud, soldiers charging across open fields, explosions that look almost slow. It feels distant. But behind those images were units so specialized, so brutally effective, that entire fronts shifted because they showed up. Not divisions, not armies. Units, a few thousand men, sometimes a few hundred. And when they arrived, things changed fast. Because World War II wasn't just fought by nations, it was fought by the most dangerous groups those nations could create. And once you start looking at them, you realize something uncomfortable. The war wasn't always won by the biggest force. It was won by the smartest, fastest, and most ruthless ones. Part 2: Mass versus Precision. By 1939, every major power had millions of soldiers. Germany mobilized over 13 million by the end of the war. The Soviet Union, over 34 million. The United States, mass mattered. But mass alone didn't win battles, because when you zoom in, really zoom in, you start seeing something else. Elite units, specialized formations built for one purpose, trained to do it better than anyone else. Shock troops, paratroopers, commandos, guards, units that didn't just fight the war, they bent it. So let's start at the bottom of this ladder. The ones who changed how modern warfare even begins. Because before the bombs fall, before the tanks roll, someone has to go first. Part 3: Fallschirmjäger. The German Fallschirmjäger, formed in 1936 under the Luftwaffe. Yes, the Air Force, not the Army. These were Germany's airborne troops, and they were terrifyingly effective. At their peak, they numbered around 22,000 men. Not huge, but highly trained. Each soldier jumped from aircraft like the Ju-52 transport plane, carrying about 12 to 18 fully equipped paratroopers per flight. Their job? Drop behind enemy lines, seize key targets, hold them until the rest of the army caught up. Simple idea, insanely hard execution. And then came 1940, Fort Eben-Emael, Belgium. This fortress was considered one of the strongest in Europe. Concrete walls, underground tunnels, heavy artillery, over 1,200 Belgian troops inside. The Germans sent 85 men. 85. They didn't parachute in. They used silent gliders, the FS-230s, that landed directly on top of the fort. No warning, no noise, just suddenly, Germans on your roof. They carried shaped charges, explosives designed to punch through armor. Within hours, they disabled the fort's main guns. The entire fortress surrendered in less than 36 hours. 85 men, that's it. Shock warfare, perfected. Part 4: The cost of power. But here's the twist. The Fallschirmjäger were so effective that they scared their own commanders. Because when Germany tried a massive airborne assault on Crete in 1941, Operation Mercury, they won, but at a cost. Over 4,000 paratroopers killed. In a single operation. Hit hard. Too hard. After that, Hitler reportedly said, no more large-scale airborne operations. The unit survived, but its role changed. And that brings us to a different kind of elite force. One that didn't drop from the sky. They came from the sea. The entire fortress surrendered in less than 36 hours. 85 men. That's it. Shock warfare. Perfected. Part 4: Crete and consequences. But here's the twist. The Fallschirmjäger were so effective that they scared even their own commanders. Because when Germany tried a massive airborne assault on Crete in 1941, Operation Mercury, they won, but at a cost. Over 4,000 paratroopers killed in a single operation. Hit hard, too hard. After that, Hitler reportedly said, no more large-scale airborne operations. The unit survived, but its role changed. And that brings us to a different kind of elite, one that didn't drop from the sky. They came from the sea. Part 5: British Commandos. The British Commandos, formed in 1940 after the fall of France, under orders from Winston Churchill himself. His directive was simple: set Europe ablaze, not with armies, with raids, small units, highly trained. fast. By 1943, there were around 25,000 commandos across multiple brigades. They trained in Scotland, near Kerry Castle, where the program was so brutal that roughly 30% of volunteers dropped out. Obstacle courses under live fire, forced marches of 7 miles in under an hour, night amphibious landings in freezing water. No room for weakness, because their missions: go in, hit hard, get out, or don't come back. Part 6. Strategic Raids. Take Operation Claymore, 1941. A raid on the Lofoten Islands in Norway. About 600 commandos landed, destroyed fish oil factories used by Germany, sank ships and captured prisoners. They were gone before the Germans could respond. Minimal casualties, maximum disruption. Or Operation Chariot, 1942. The St. Nazaire Raid. A single old destroyer, HMS Campbelltown, packed with 4.5 tons of explosives, rammed into a German dry dock. Commandos poured out, fought through the port, set charges. Hours later, the ship exploded. The dock was destroyed, and here's why that mattered. That dock was one of the only ones on the Atlantic coast capable of servicing the German battleship Tirpitz. Without it, the Tirpitz couldn't safely operate in the Atlantic. One raid, strategic impact. That's the power of specialization. But while the British focused on precision, another force focused on something else entirely: endurance, brutality, sheer refusal to break. The Soviet Guards units, not a separate branch but a title, an honor earned in battle. First introduced in 1941, after the Battle of Yelnya, when certain Red Army units performed exceptionally well, they were redesignated as Guards, and from that moment, they were different. Better equipment, higher pay, priority for reinforcements, and expectations, high ones. By 1945, there were over 11 Guards armies, plus dozens of Guards divisions, corps and regiments, hundreds of thousands of troops. These were the units you sent when you needed a breakthrough, or when you refused to lose. Part 8. Stalingrad Story. Meet Ivan Petrov, not a general, not famous, just a Guards rifleman at Stalingrad, 1942. Winter, -20 degrees Celsius. No proper winter gear. His unit had lost half its men in 2 weeks. Orders came down: no retreat. Behind them, NKVD blocking units, troops ordered to shoot anyone who ran. So Ivan stayed. He fought in buildings reduced to rubble, sometimes just rooms separated by broken walls, distances measured in meters, sometimes less. You didn't see the enemy. You heard them breathing. Days turned into weeks into months, and somehow they held. That's what Guards meant. Not just elite, unbreakable. And when the Red Army finally pushed west in 1943-45, it was often Guards units leading the charge. First in, last out. Part 9. Tiger Battalions. But not every elite unit relied on numbers or endurance. Some relied on something far more dangerous: control. Total control of the battlefield. The German Schwere Panzerabteilung, heavy tank battalions, independent units equipped with some of the most feared machines of the war. The Tiger I, introduced in 1942. Weight, 57 tons. Main gun, 88mm cable K-36. Effective range, over 2,000 meters. Armor, up to 120mm thick. Translation: it could destroy most Allied tanks before they even got close enough to fire back. Part 1. Invisible War. They didn't carry rifles. They didn't storm beaches. Most of them never saw the enemy face to face. But they could end battles before they even began. The British government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park. A name that sounds boring. It wasn't. Part 2. The Brain of War. Formed before the war but exploding in importance by 1940, this wasn't a unit in the traditional sense. It was a brain. At its peak, over 10,000 people worked there. Mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, crossword puzzle experts, people like Alan Turing. And their weapon? Information. Part 3. Breaking the unbreakable. Germany relied heavily on encrypted communications using the Enigma machine, a device with rotating rotors creating about 150 quintillion settings. That's 150 followed by 18 zeros. Unbreakable, that's what the Germans thought. They were wrong. Using early electromechanical computers called bombes, the team at Bletchley Park began cracking Enigma messages. Not all of them. Not always, but enough, and often enough to matter. Part 4. Invisible impacts. Convoys rerouted to avoid U-boat wolf packs, air raids anticipated before they happened. German troop movements tracked in near real time. According to British intelligence estimates, this shortened the war in Europe by at least 2 years. 2 years. That's millions of lives saved. No shots fired. That's power. Pure invisible power. Part 5. War of Information. And it introduces something new. War isn't just about destroying the enemy. It's about understanding them faster than they understand you. But if Bletchley Park was about listening, another unit made sure the enemy couldn't hear anything at all. Part 6. Electronic Warfare. German Funkabwehr and Electronic Warfare Units. Now electronic warfare sounds technical, so here's the simple version. These are units that don't shoot bullets. They shoot signals. They jam radios. They confuse radar. They intercept communications. They turn your own systems against you. Part 7. Control the signals. By 1943, both Axis and Allied forces relied heavily on radio communication. Orders, coordinates, air support, all flowing through invisible waves. And if you control those waves, you control the battlefield. Part 8. Invisible Duel. During Allied bombing campaigns over Germany, German EW units used jamming to disrupt navigation system. Planes would think they were over the target. They weren't. Bombs missed. Cities survived, or at least survived that night. And the Allies responded in kind. Counter-jamming, signal deception, a constant invisible duel in the air. No explosions, but massive consequences. Part 9. Weaponizing language. Because now you've got units that don't just fight physically, they fight informationally, psychologically. Which brings us to a group that weaponized something even simpler. Language. Part 10. Navajo Code Talkers. The Navajo Code Talkers. United States Marine Corps. Pacific Theater. 1942 onward. About 400 Navajo men served as code talkers during the war. Their job? Transmit messages that the enemy couldn't understand. Simple idea. Brilliant execution. Part 11. Layered encryption. They used the Navajo language, complex, unwritten, and unknown to the Japanese. But they didn't stop there. They created a code within the language. For example, tank became turtle, bomber became pregnant airplane, submarine became iron. So even if someone somehow understood Navajo, they still wouldn't understand the message. Layered encryption. Fast, reliable, unbreakable. Part 12. Iwo Jima. During the Battle of Iwo Jima in 1945, 6 Navajo Code Talkers transmitted over 800 messages. In the first 48 hours, not one error, not one message decoded by the Japanese. Major Howard Connor later said, "Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima."